Hello and welcome to I'm Your Biggest Fan, the podcast that chats to your favourite artists about their favourite artists. I'm your host Jazmin L'Amy in conjunction with the Noise Podcast Network and sponsored by Satanic Tico. Today, UK-based post-hardcore outfit Hidden Mothers have shared the stage with genre titans Empire State Bastard, Svalbard, Conjurer, Harriet, Bosk and more, and have appeared at venues and festivals across the country, including Arctangent. Their brand new album, Erosion Avulsion, dropped in November 2024, and today I'm chatting with vocalist and guitarist Luke Scrivens about his all-time favourite band, Thrice. You can follow them yourself at Hidden Mothers UK everywhere. Also, do excuse me today, as you can probably hear, I am sick and bunged up, so enjoy listening to that. Obviously, you've just revealed some information there about your own band, Hidden Mothers' upcoming debut album. Would you like to repeat that?
Yeah, so we've got a debut album coming out on November the 29th. There's actually the last singles releasing tomorrow, which is, will probably already be out by the time the podcast is out, obviously, because it's tomorrow. So 8th of October is a Violet Sun release, so that should be out by this point, and hopefully people have listened to that by this point as well.
That's going to be awesome. But yeah, we'll get into and talk about like how you record and write your own music as well, actually, in regards to your favorite band, Thrice.
Yeah.
So you said there that you've seen a couple of clips from episodes I've previously done, but for anyone that would be listening to this that has no idea what this podcast is about, this is basically an opportunity for you to forget about being in your own band for a little bit, forget about being a musician and just revert back and reminisce to being a fan, because especially with social media these days, I find fans forget that their favorite artists just started out like they did. Like,
of course, yeah.
We are all fans of music, and the way someone would feel about Hidden Mothers is exactly the same way you and your other members would feel about other bands. So yeah, it's just a little fun opportunity for you to basically fanboy over your favorite band.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want that?
Well, no, of course, yeah.
So the first and biggest question of all is, do you remember the first time you came across and heard Thrice?
Yeah, I figured you would ask this. I've been thinking about it a lot, and it's really hard to remember sometimes because they're kind of like a band that I feel like it's almost like you would say you have a hometown. Like, my favorite band is Thrice. It's just always my go-to because I've liked them for so long. It's just kind of like they could probably do a run of really bad albums I didn't enjoy, and it would still always be my favorite band. I think it starts where most good things have started, which was probably with Busted. Because I'm of that age where, so I'm 29 now, so I was born in 1995. And I'm of that age where, like, when I was 8, 9 years old, that was the kind of music I first got into, was like the Busted boy band thing. And then somewhere out of that, I can't remember at what point, I transitioned into Charlie Simpson's other band, Fight Star. And then I vividly remember there being a point, probably in my early teens or something, when I was Googling, because it's the age where the internet, I guess, is just becoming like a thing that as a teenager, you're able to Google anything nowadays. And I think I remember Googling bands that sound like Fight Star. And I think I literally just came across Thrice, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, Fight Star's still a cool band, don't get me wrong, nothing against them, but this is them, but this is like real kind of, this is not like, I don't know, there was just something about them that I thought that, this is what Fight Star are trying to sound like, which is probably, they would probably agree with. That was like, they're like I guess like an OG band. They've been around since like the late 1990s, early 2000s, and they were real big in like the early post-hardcore thing. But I guess, yeah, I discovered them looking back from all like the 2009 stuff, like Fight Star and other bands similar, I guess.
Sorry, I've just developed a cough.
No,
So I guess you would say then like in terms of developing a whole new genre, that Thrice was kind of like the evolution of what Fight Star, well, like you said, were like trying to be and trying to start. So besides
Yeah,
kind of sounding fuller and more complete, what was it about Thrice that was so different to anything else you had heard up until that point?
I don't know. So I think it was just kind of what I've always liked in music, and since I was very very young, this is always what I've kind of looked for in music, which is music that is ultimately quite sad and quite melancholic. And I remember hearing songs like Red Sky from Viesu, um, and I think that was probably one of the first songs I heard. And I just think that encompassed that so well, and they just did it so well. And but I think with one of the things I've always loved about Thrice, I don't know if I necessarily picked up so much on this when I was younger, but they are lyrically just so just they're just there's no wasted lyric. Everything is like I feel like a lot of bands from that kind of genre, the post hardcore thing. It's just especially around the time when I first started getting into that kind of music, a lot of it was quite shallow. And like Dustin Kensrue's lyrics is like he writes every song for me. The way I would always look at every song feels like an essay. It's kind of got there's whole varied meanings from album to album of different kind of looking at political stuff, social stuff. His faith's quite important to him because I know he's a Christian, but interestingly, from album to album, that's changed as well. Like I know I've really always respected the fact that, like, in some of the most recent albums, I mean, I'm not of any faith myself, but in some of the recent albums, he's very open about the fact that I wrote this album 4 years ago when I had this idea of faith. Now I have a very different idea of faith, and I'm going to talk about. And I just love that. I just thought that the way that I think I picked up from a very young age, just kind of that they were just doing something that I'd not heard before, and kind of the way that they spoke about the world and things like that.
Yeah, you sound very similar to me. Like when I listen to music, the first thing I pick up on is like the vocals and the lyrics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I know, like for me, lyrics are very important. Like if yeah, because like I studied like English literature and language at
Uh-huh.
school. So like there are certain bands that I listen to, and I've got, this is so sad. I've got in my notes app on my phone, I've got a notes of like all my favorite one-liners I've ever heard. So
Oh, that's cool. Might do that myself.
like, if I'm just out and about and like it could be a band I've never heard of before, it could be a song I've never heard before, but if there's just like one single line that I think is like really clever or really profound or like hits really hard, I'll just write it down.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Oh yeah,
So like yeah, I know what you mean by there are a lot of bands you can tell when sometimes their lyrics don't feel totally organic.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Oh yeah, yeah.
like sure, I assume it's got to be really difficult being a vocalist and a lyricist as well, especially like if you're trying to make something rhyme and you're trying to make something like fit into a certain
Mm-hmm.
time signature, you can't always have that like rolling freedom as you would if you were just writing in
Mm-hmm.
prose. Um, but no, yeah, I get what you mean. I get what you mean there. So, do you have a favorite Thrice lyric?
There's a lot. I mean, there's one I've got tattooed on me because I loved it so much, which was from the song "Beggars" by off the album "Beggars," which is "Can you summon the sun from its sleep?" I mean, I remember I was like 18 when I got the tattoo, and I think I went to them with like 8 lines. I was like, "Could you tattoo this whole verse?" And they're like, "No, mate, there's no chance." So they were just like, "Just choose one line." So I chose the one line that I thought summed up the whole song. It's a really beautiful song. I mean, I think I don't know what angle he intended it to come at, but for me, it came from lots of different angles. I think he intended it to come from like more of a faith angle of kind of, because the whole song's kind of like, no matter who you are in the world, everything has something has been given to you to help you get where you are. So no person is better than another person. which I think he was coming at from probably a faith angle, maybe his like people's relationship with God. I mean, I'm not of a faith, like I said, so I kind of read the song, and maybe he also intended it like this. I know politically, he has good politics, as you would say, in my opinion. And I always read it as being just very kind of in almost like a left wing anarchist socialist way, kind of no man or woman is better than any other man or woman. Everybody's equal. And I just always thought it was a really beautiful line. And I remember, yeah, as soon as I was like 18, 19, I was just like, that was the song I wanted to kind of remember forever. So,
yeah. I've got a couple of lyrics tattooed on me as well. Is that the only Thrice tattoo you have, or do you have others?
No, that's the only Thrice tattoo I've got. I mean, I'm not a heavily tattooed person anyway, so I guess that makes it mean a little bit more, I guess. But yeah, that's the only Thrice thing I've got anyway.
Awesome. We're gonna take it back a little bit there. So you said that you started off with Busted, transitioned into Fight Star, and then found Thrice. When you were like doing your research on Google and Googling stuff, do you remember what song it was you heard first from them? Do you remember your journey? Was it an album you listened to? Like where did it begin?
Yeah. Also, you saying that back makes me realize how rinsed I'm going to get for saying that Busted was my intro into heavy music.
Honestly, like I've done quite a few of these episodes now, and I've done some like small clips and snippets at a festival early in the year. So many people's gateway band was Busted.
I think it's just because the new generation of musicians are probably about like late 20s, early 30s, and I guess that is people who were that age. Busted was the in for a lot of rock music for people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like all because there's an interesting. Sorry, I will answer the question. I wanted to talk about that now because there's an interesting kind of like two of the lads in our band, Ariane and Liam. They're both in their late 30s, and me and Adam are in our late 20s. And it's always interesting talking to them because their intro to heavy music seems so much cooler than ours because they're always like, oh yeah, I remember in like 2001 I heard Linkin Park or Limp Bizkit for the first time, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember in 2005 hearing Busted for the first time. I don't know. In terms of album, I don't. I reckon I feel like the first track I might have heard might have been Red Sky. I feel like around the time I was doing my first kind of deep dive into the band, though, was when they did a kind of run of 4 EPs, which kind of made up. I don't know if they classed them as 2 LPs or 4 EPs, but it was kind of it's called the Alchemy Index, and each EP was about a different element. And I remember kind of deep diving into that, and that had a tremendous effect on me because it was kind of like because they did like an Earth EP, which was essentially like folk. Some of it's also a bit bluesy and a bit soulful. And then they did a Water EP, which was essentially like ambient kind of electronica. And then they did Fire, which was like straight up like post metal, in my opinion. And then Air, which was kind of post hardcore, post rocky. And I don't know, that had a really big impact on me. I felt like it, in some ways, it kind of matured me musically a lot before my years in a way, because like I remember starting my first bands like when I was like 16, and like that was what I was listening to. And we're talking like early like 2010, 2011. And other people in our kind of music were more doing kind of like the Death Havana thing and kind of the things that were current then. We Are the Ocean, I guess a lot of the kind of British post-hardcore bands. And I was trying to do this music made by like, blokes in their late 30s who'd been doing it for a very long time. And that's kind of matured me in a way. Not necessarily for the better. It doesn't mean that I was making better music. It just meant that we were trying to do something that was kind of so grown up in a way and like kind of so diverse. And I think that's kind of stuck with me for so long. It's always made me kind of not really be content with just doing stuff really heavy or just doing stuff really soft or kind of, I don't know. I think that always really stuck with me. But I think that.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because I remember like my own musical journey. Like I used to be so close-minded. I started out
Mm-hmm.
in like hard rock and like the dad rock stuff, and anything that was
Mm.
remotely screamy, I was just like turn it off.
Uh,
So close-minded for so long, and I hate to admit this, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but like it wasn't until lockdown 2020, which is very
oh
rare,
right,
that I
yeah,
and I now I'm on like complete fucking opposite end of the spectrum. Now I
yeah,
do stuff for Lorna Shore. It's insane. But
yeah,
it's interesting that your gateway into heavy music started with four completely diverse, like musically diverse EPs, which, as you say there, like it would make you more mature musically because you're not
yeah.
listening to this one album that's got one sound and it's just one journey. You've got four all together.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
it is interesting. I mean, it's weird as well because that was. I mean, my heavy. I mean, I must have. I was a bit of a strange kid in the sense that this is it's so hard to kind of picture. Like, I know that like the moment that I stuck with heavy music was with bands like Thrice, but I do. There was like a period, maybe 2006, 2007, a long time before I ended up like getting into heavy music permanently, where I guess this is an age thing as well, just me being the golden age to have experienced this. But like Scuzz on TV, the metal channel,
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of like my intro to metal music. And then maybe I was a little bit more because I was so young. I was just kind of like I remember that was just I was just like Killswitch Engage and just Trivium and that kind of thing. But then, when I came back to heavy music as a teenager, Thrice was the band. It was just kind of like Thrice and Alexis on Fire were the two bands that were just kind of like they are the bands for me. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned there the of the four EPs slash two LPs that you were introduced to Thrice on, that your obviously one of your first songs would have been on that collection. And I find that, especially for me, the first song I hear of a band tends to remain my favorite one because it's got so much like attachment and like value to it. So for you, has your favorite song changed since then?
My favorite Thrice songs changed. Yeah. Um, I think there was a point when I first started getting into Thrice around the Alchemy Index. I mean, I always loved Viesu, which is the album before as well. But I think because I was of kind of a because I was so young when I first got into them, I felt like I didn't have the endurance with music that I do now. As in, like with VSU, it was like I liked four songs off that whole record until I got old enough to appreciate the whole thing. With Alchemy Index, because it was so much easier to appreciate the whole thing because it was so much shorter. I think I just loved it from the get go. But my favorite song was probably Broken Lungs, which is off the Air EP. That was my originally favorite song off Alchemy Index, which I actually which is takes me back. Think this is why it's been great thinking about Thrice for these because it's like been a proper trip down memory lane. I remember actually performing that for my GCSE music exam. Uh, so that was definitely my favorite song at that period. But
Yeah.
it changes. I got an A overall. I mean, I got a B on the overall. Um, it was something crazy. Whereas I got like full marks on the performance, full marks on the composition, but I couldn't read music, and no one had ever really shown me how to read music, and I'd never tried either. So
Mhm.
I ended up getting a B overall, which was disappointing. Maybe one day I'll learn to read music, but I'm 29 now. It's probably
Yeah.
I'm doing all right with
Fine
music
without
without.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's changed all the time. Like I said, Beggars became my favorite song for a while. Recently, I think to be honest, it's when we booked in this interview. I remember thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to go, brush up on my like Thrice stuff. And I was like, there's a new album that they'd released, and like I'd heard it a few times, and I remember thinking, oh, I like that. And then, as you do with music, a lot of times in the 2020s when everything comes so fast, I kind of just moved on. And I went back to that, and now I can't stop listening to the newest Thrice album. I mean, it was released 2 years ago, Horizons East, and the songs on that, which are some of my favorite songs right now as well. So
That's so good. It's interesting that you say that because, like, with these interviews that I've done, a lot of people, obviously, like your favorite bands and the one that holds the most influence on you was always the one you got into when you were first getting into music. And as I'm sure you know, like getting older, it's so much harder to keep up with music and listen to music. So a lot of people that I've spoken to haven't taken the time to listen to their favorite band's most recent material.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're like, because I've got all the information like in front of me, and I say, oh, what do you think of this album or this album? And the amount of people that have been like, I've not actually listened to it yet, or I listened to it once and just didn't listen to it again.
Yeah.
It's not only is it interesting that like you have taken the time to keep up with Thrice, but also you can still appreciate what they're doing now, this many years later, is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just think that it's hard to understate, I guess, like how important I feel like they've been as a band for me, like in terms of so many aspects. And like I just think that I've kind of grown up with them, and I also just think they're really good musicians, and I just don't think they've ever released a bad album, which I know not a lot everybody agrees with me on. Like I was talking to a member of my band a couple of weeks ago about one of their albums. He was like, not sure about that. And I was like, but how can you dislike anything they've done? They're so good. But maybe there's an element of there's that like I said at the beginning. It's kind of like, to me they're kind of like, you have a hometown, you have a native language, you have that's just the band for me. It's like, anyone asks what my favorite band is, it's Thrice, and that's just the way it's always been, and probably always will be. So maybe there's an element of that. In my head, I feel like they can not do wrong, which could be a flaw of mine. Maybe I don't look at them as critically as maybe as I would look at other bands, like having an actual opinion on a record. I don't know.
You mentioned there's a disagreement you had with a fellow band member. So Hidden Mothers currently have one EP and one upcoming debut album. How has your love of Thrice influenced your own music writing when you first started compared to now?
I think the obvious one, and the one that gets talked about a lot by people talking to us as a band, and people, our band talking amongst people, is I guess my voice. Because the way that I sing, people often always tell me that it sounds very similar. Wouldn't give Dustin Kensrue enough credit because he's a far better vocalist than I am, but the way that which is I find crazy. It's almost like biologically they've had an imprint on me, because I never woke up one day and said I want to sing like the singer from Thrice. But I guess just because they've had such a big influence on me, that's the obvious one. I think I've always that's always been like a big part of the way that my music's ended up sounding as like a clean vocalist. And I think lyrics are a big thing as well. I think I've always taken, because like I'm obviously write the lyrics for Hidden Mothers, and I think the way that he writes has been a big influence on the way that I write lyrically as well. I think I'm always quite envious of other bands. Like, I think there's some examples, like, I don't know, like La Dispute, Touche Amore, even like the Menzingers, like just the way that certain bands can be storytelling in songs. I've never been like that. And to be honest, I don't think Dustin Kensrue from Thrice has really. He's not. I mean, he's an amazing lyricist, and he does tell some beautiful stories in some of his songs, especially in some of the more recent stuff when I think his style's changed. But I've always felt that he's always been quite heavy on like metaphor and imagery, and kind of not necessarily being obvious what a song's about straight away. And I think I've always been like that for that reason. Maybe not just because of that, maybe just because I just like the idea of imagery in songs, and I like to create imagery rather than just say, I was doing this, this made me feel this kind of thing. I don't know. But they're the obvious ones, I think. And I think the way it's kind of changed more now, I think in the beginning, that's kind of like the foundational things. I think recently, I think they're always a band that I'll kind of reference as to the way a band can mature really well. So kind of like, I know we're so early on in what Hidden Mothers are doing right now, but I think because we're all fairly experienced at what we do, because we've all been in bands before, it's always kind of like, I always feel like I'm always kind of saying that, just like, we can bands, just how bands mature. I think Thrice is a really good example. And I'm always kind of saying, oh, I think it's great to kind of do this kind of thing, leave behind maybe some of the more obvious things in certain genres and kind of try and create something new like Thrice. I felt like Thrice did. I think there's an element of that. And I always kind of reference them as a reference point of, I don't want to just kind of do one thing. I want to kind of always be kind of harnessing new things, and I sound like I felt like they've always done. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, it's either like lyrically and vocally and more kind of like as the bigger picture that they've had an influence.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, and I think more recently with Hidden Mothers as well, because we had quite a label, so to speak, on us, which was fine. We kind of embraced that label of being like a post black metal or like a black gaze band. And then I think as time has gone on, I've kind of been trying to, and so the other lads as well, trying to introduce more like post hardcore elements and just kind of trying to kind of chisel away at what we were to try and make something that's maybe a little bit more comprehensive, that doesn't kind of keep us in one box, so to speak. And I think bands like Thrice are like a reference point for things like that for me.
Yeah. Have you ever managed, because I know they were over here in the UK earlier this year, have you managed to ever catch them in a live setting?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was 3 times or twice. I'm thinking it's twice.
Oh, if it was 3 times, you could have seen them thrice.
There we go. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I definitely do need to see them thrice because I didn't even make that link to that joke, and I need to do that now.
We can just
I've just seen them.
Just say you've seen them twice.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's twice. Yeah. I saw them once. Probably like one of the first opportunities I would have got to, which was when I was like, because I grew up in a city where bands wouldn't really, because I grew up in Stoke-on-Trent in the West Midlands, and no bands really ever came through there. And I didn't really have many opportunities growing up to, say, go to Manchester or Birmingham to see the bands I liked, which would be the obvious places. So when I went off to university, I guess that would have been the first opportunity I got to see them. And I went to see them in London. I think it would have been like 2016. I would have been about 20 years old, 21. It would have been the first opportunity I'd have had, I think. I remember that was mad because I would never do this now as a nearly 30-year-old man, but I was like, I remember booking the tickets and somebody saying like, how are you going to get back from London for the show? Or are you going to book a hotel? And I was like, oh, I don't know, I'll just figure it out. I remember waiting, like going to see the band and then just waiting in the bus station till like 6 a.m. to get the bus back to Sheffield, which would never in a million years would I do that now.
Yeah.
As a not a nearly teenager, but and I think I saw them again a couple of years later in Nottingham, and I have not seen them since, and it's really sad. I would really love to see them again. I didn't catch them this year. I can't remember why, but there was a reason why I didn't go.
When you it's interesting that your story about seeing them when you went to uni is exactly like the same as me. Like I grew up on the island of Jersey in the Channel Islands.
Oh wow, yeah.
So again, not a music scene at all. If I wanted to go see any type of band, I would have to like fly over to England to do it.
Yeah.
So when I went to uni in Brighton, like there's a music scene in Brighton, but it wasn't any of the bands I wanted to see. Like I wanted something heavier, and I found Brighton more like indie based. So I spent like every weekend of uni training up to London to go and see like all my favorite bands. And I did exactly the same thing as you. I think it was it was a Steel Panther show at one point.
Oh yeah.
They do this thing where like they get loads of girls up on stage, and if you get on up on stage, you get like a after party wristband thing. And it was like
Okay, yeah.
first time doing anything like that. So I said to my friend, I was like, we can't not go to this after party, but if we go, we're gonna miss our last train home. So
And how far is it from like London to Brighton? Is it a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours?
not even that. It's literally like an
No.
hour and a half on the train.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we did the same. We just like walking around London at like 3 o'clock in the morning, next train back to Brighton. But so when you did manage to see Thrice for the first time, did you go with any friends, by yourself? How did you feel finally seeing them in a live setting?
Yeah, I went with a really good mate of mine who I was in my first like real band with back when I was like I guess between like 16 and 20. Um, we went together because we both again we were friends at high school, like, and we grew up together, like in the same bands, and like Thrice was this. Yeah, probably I don't know. Wouldn't want to put words in his mouth, but I imagine Thrice are similar kind of meaning to him. Um, and we went together, and if I'm honest, and this sounds awful, but I just have to be honest. I can't really remember the show that much. I don't know. I remember we were sat down, which I remember I was gutted about, but it was the only tickets I could get because I was, I guess, a bit of a lazy 20-year-old or whatever, and I booked the tickets too late. And I remember being gutted about that. I remember a handful of songs that like, and I remember thinking, "Oh wow, I'm so glad that they played that." I can't remember what they were, but which is really, it's just quite sad to think about. But it was, I guess, it was nearly 10 years ago now. So
What about the second time you saw them? Do you have less
I
hate?
remember, yeah, I remember that a bit better. I think because they just released an album. They've just released, I think, would have been, I think it was 2017 when I saw them again, or 2018, and they've not long released "To Be Everywhere Is to Be Nowhere," which is what is often considered by, I guess, people who don't just think everything they've done is good. Is what a lot of people consider one of their best albums. And that was awesome. That was really really great. And like there's some songs on that album. Oh, I'm gonna get this wrong now. I don't know. Is it on that album or was it on the album before? The song. I might just have to check before I say something wrong. The song. They must have played it. Okay, it wasn't on that album, but they played a song, "Words in the Water,"
Mhm.
and I think they played that, or they played another very emotional song, either off "To Be Ever As I Know." And I remember that being a really special moment because that's one of my another one. I can't believe I've not mentioned that song. "Words in the Water" is and such an incredible song. And it was either that or another song off "To Be Ever As Nowhere." But yeah, it was a really really special experience the second time. I think I remember that one a little bit better.
Mhm.
Maybe it was just the tiredness of being awake for like 24 hours. That way I forgot the first one.
I think when I was listening to Thrice for this interview, I really enjoyed the song Under a Killing Moon.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's off Artists in the Ambulance, isn't it? Yeah.
Thrice have actually recently dropped the second episode of their own podcast discussing and diving into their history as a band and specifically focusing on their 2019 Beggars era. Have you listened to that yet?
I honestly had no idea that even existed.
Well, now you do. They've got two episodes discussing the the Beggars era,
Oh. Oh
which,
wow. I need to check that out.
which I think is quite cool because I find like a lot of bands, especially the deeper into their careers they get, a lot of bands don't like their own big albums. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
so I imagine it'll be pretty cool like listening to them actually talk about it in depth and in detail and having that first hand experience. with them.
Yeah, because I remember seeing something that they said, because like their like breakthrough album, their album that kind of, I mean, not to suggest that they're like some super rich band or anything, but the band that kind of commercially made it the most was like Artists in the Ambulance. And I remember hearing some stuff, and I hope I'm not putting words in their mouth, but I remember hearing some stuff that they didn't like the way that it was mixed or something, which I think was part of the reason why they recently did they basically re-recorded the whole album for the 20-year anniversary. And I hope I'm quoting them right now, but it was something like, I felt like I heard something like they didn't like the way it was mixed or mastered, or maybe I've just made that up. But regardless, I imagine that's quite cool to see them go back to an album that they did 20 years before. When realistically, I mean, that was what, 2003? And I think they're all like early 40s now, so they were probably like late teens, early 20s when they did that, and they've just done it again, all as like, card holding adults, so to speak. And it's mental that they did that, because it's just like, it just shows how much that they've not lost kind of any interest in their old material, or kind of how good it is as well, or how good how well it's held up over the years.
Yeah. So we're going to call it 11 studio albums. We're going to put the Alchemy Index into two categories.
Mm-hmm.
Of their 11 studio albums, how would you rank them?
Now, I would probably put. It'd be different now than probably what I would have put in the past. I think right now,
as a card adult,
yeah, as a card holding adult, I would probably put. I'm really racking my brain whether I choose Palms or Color of the Sky for the best one. I mean, they're both the two most recent as well, but I just think they are both really good. But maybe that's just because the way I've interpreted it, because I've grown up a bit since I liked some of their older stuff, which I think still holds up. But I would probably say right now, I've been listening to Color of the Sky so much recently, like I said, since so I'd probably say that. Then I'd probably say Beggars. No, I would say Beggars. I'd have to say Beggars, because Beggars was such an important record for me. I think I first heard that when I was like 15, 16, and that was really, really a big one for me. So Beggars, I'd probably say Color of the Sky. Then I'd probably say Palms, because I think Palms is great as well. That's another recent one. I'd probably say the Alchemy Index. Then Viesu. Oh God. It's really hard because they've done so many and they're all so different. And they were all such different experiences as well to listen to. I would probably say To Be Everywhere Is Nowhere next. Then I would probably say Illusion of Safety, or Illusion of Safety. Then I would probably say, I'm getting lost now. What have I not said? I mean, I know what I would put. What have I not said? Sorry.
Identity Crisis.
Identity Crisis would be left. Major Minor probably would be above Illusion of Safety. The Identity Crisis one's a weird one, because I honestly could probably say I probably never listened to that all the way through.
Okay.
I don't think a lot of people who got into Thrice later on would have done, because I think they were all like, I mean, I think some of them were like 17 when they wrote that album, and it was so different to everything that they've ever done. It's like, it's some parts of the parts that I have heard of it. I mean, I probably should go. It's kind of more, some parts of it are like almost like pop punk, skate punk, and some parts of it are still kind of got like that metallic post-hardcore kind of thing that they do in Illusion of Safety. But it is just, they're just not, they just are just finding their feet with that one. I would always consider, in my eyes, Illusion of Safety to be like their first album, which is historically inaccurate, but I don't know. That's just, to me, the first album where they sounded like Thrice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I've covered all of them. I don't think I missed any out. I think that would probably be the order. I definitely think at the moment Beggars would be my favorite, and I just love Color of the Sky, which is the one that they released in 2022. I think it's really good.
Nice. So those are the albums. But if you had to direct someone listening to Thrice for the first time, what 3 songs would you suggest encapsulates them perfectly?
I would try and cover what I would class as like kind of like their 3 sounds that I feel like they've done over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in recent years they've been more all the parts of what they do in the last few years is almost some of it's quite like bluesy oriented, like the way that they use the guitar and like the guitar tones that they use, and nothing's like drenched in distortion anymore, or everything's very kind of natural and organic. So I'd probably to get that sound, I would probably say I'm gonna have to look at what's on, but on that record now that I'm thinking of, I would probably say um, to be everywhere. What is on to be everywhere is to be nowhere. I would probably say Hurricane to kind of show that later sound. That's like one of their most strongest songs off that record, and that's got that real kind of bluesy, heavy, kind of soulful vocals, but with like a bit of a gritty edge thing to it. Then I'd probably do of Dustin Nations, which I think is the next one, which does kind of like when they were doing more like post rocky, kind of reverberant, kind of atmospheric-y, but still quite hardcore, still quite heavy. Sorry, sound. I'd probably say that for that kind of middle era, or Broken Lungs, and then for like the old kind of almost like metallic post hardcore kind of buzzsaw guitars, kind of super distorted, old fashioned, let's have a mosh kind of vibe. I probably would say what you said earlier, actually, Under a Killing Moon, I'd probably say, or Silhouettes.
Nice. And what was the other song you mentioned earlier, one of their slower ones that you saw live? Something about water.
Well, Words in the Water is one of my favorite songs, but they've got a couple of songs that are like I mean, like most bands have got like a ballad on a record, but theirs are just so good, man. Like, Words in the Water is amazing. Everything Belongs off Palms is like another soft one that's amazing, and probably one of my favorite songs that they've ever done is Beyond the Pines, which is off one of the newer records, Palms. And that is just such an emotional song. And I mean, I lyrically don't know what it's about, but the lyrics are really beautiful as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, judging from the lyrics and the fact that he's a person of faith, it sounds like it could be about like the afterlife or heaven or something. I'm not sure, but it's such beautiful lyrics. I mean, you can tell just the title's beautiful. Beyond the Pines, it's just an amazing title. That's just such a cracking song as well.
Yeah. So Hidden Mothers recently got to play Arctangent this year. Have you ever been on the same festival bill as Thrice? And if you haven't, which festival would you like to play alongside them?
No, we haven't. We never have. I would love to. I think if there was going to be ever a chance, I think I would love it to be 2000 Trees, which is the like I guess sister festival of Arctangent Festival. So we'd love to play there. I mean, it's kind of like they've headlined 2000 Trees before, and we are probably just around the kind of band who could probably just about get away with playing 2000 Trees. We're probably not too heavy or weird to get on the bill. Because I think it's a bit. I mean, by that I mean as in because it's quite like it's an amazing festival. But Arctangent's usually where a lot of the more like atmospheric and kind of left of centre bands go, and then I feel like 2000 Trees is maybe slightly more. I don't know. I guess bands that are maybe easier to bob your head to, although not all the time. They've got they have loads of cool bands, and some of them are a bit left of centre as well.
Yeah, they definitely seem to be getting more diverse throughout the years as well, I find.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
If you were on the same festival bill as them and playing the same day, I'm assuming you've not met them before, but
No, never, no.
do you think you could meet them? How do you think that interaction would go?
I mean, it's a weird one because I mean I don't know how much everybody who's like spoken to you like on these interviews and stuff, how much everybody likes the band that they like in comparison to me, because like I've got like their tour DVDs and all their live DVDs, so like I've watched as a young person, like I would spend. I remember. I remember I had days when I was like sick for school, like at high school when I didn't go to school because I was sick, and I'd watch the Thrice tour documentary, and like so that makes it really strange for me because they aren't just a band; they literally are like I don't know they are in a celebrity status for me, even though they aren't probably maybe not in a celebrity status for. I mean, they are a huge band, of course, but they're not. They're not exactly Hollywood stars, but so it would be really strange. But they seem like really good dudes, and they seem like really nice people. So I probably would try and speak to them, but I'm very awkward when it comes to things like that, and I'm always very apprehensive of feeling because we have been fortunate enough to meet people who we like and musicians who have been who've done things that we would dream to do, for example. And it is always a bit awkward because I don't know, you just don't want to be, what like the Phoebe Bridgers song Punisher. Nobody wants to be a Punisher.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember the second interview I did for this, I was interviewing Joe Nally from Iman, and he was talking about Metallica, and I think it was, I don't know what it would have been, but they were on the same festival bill as Metallica, and like I don't think he's got that bit in his brain where he's like, oh, I don't want to come across as a Punisher. He's the opposite. So I think they were like in a backstage catering area one time, and all of a sudden all these like bodyguards and security were like walking through, and like in amongst the huddle was Lars Ulrich, and he didn't go over and say hi or anything, but he was just like obviously like trying to take like photos. And the rest of his bandmates being like, guys, get over here now, Lars Ulrich is
Yeah. See, I don't think they would have bodyguards. I'd probably be all right in that respect. Not as far as I'm aware, anyway. But I think, I don't think I've actually met people who've met them. I don't think I've ever asked them about them. Maybe that would have been a good start, actually. I would have been really interested to find out what they're like from people who've met them. And they all seem like really cool dudes. Like I even remember a few years ago, I used to get a lot of my music recommendations off of Riley Breckenridge, who's the drummer. He used to run, I don't know if he does it anymore, or at least I don't follow it anymore. I don't think he does. He used to have his own blog called Hermetology, where he used to basically just every day post about bands. And a lot of bands I listen to today I found from that, because he's like a big runner, and I know he goes on big runs and like listens to like 4 new records, and then he'll post about his favorite ones and stuff, and that was really cool. So I'm sure they seem like nice people.
If you ever meet him, you can open the conversation by telling him of the bands you discovered through him.
Yeah. What happened to your blog as well? Yeah, that was cool.
So my last question for you is, are you a fan of band merch, and have you owned any cool Thrice merch before?
I've owned Thrice merch in the past. I can't remember what a lot happened to it. A lot of it, I changed. I change. I change my mind about merch quite a lot, and often get rid of it. I'm not like some of the lads in my band are. They have like. I mean, I've never asked them, but they must have hundreds of band shirts. I won't really have more than 10 at once, probably. And I usually won't buy anything unless I really like a band as well. And then usually there's a running joke in the band where it's like they'll see me. I say we're supporting a band, like say for example, we supported Dawn Raid last year or the year before when they were still together, because amazing band now split up. I remember buying a Dawn Raid t-shirt, and Liam came up to me and was just saying something like, "You're going to wear that in next show, aren't you?" And I was like, "Of course I am. I don't have any other shirts, so I wear all the other shirts I have in every other show." That's like, if you look at any pictures on our Instagram recently, there's a Have Heart t-shirt that I've been rinsing to death at every show because I'm just not like an avid merch buyer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've bought like 3 or 4, but yeah, I think I've got rid of a couple. I've got one Thrice shirt on now, which is very nondescript, and you can't even tell it's a Thrice shirt. This is from "To Be Everywhere Is to Be Nowhere." I think it's actually lyrics from "The Runaway of the Gathering Storm." I think it's Hurricane. Sorry, I had to sing it to remember the melody, to remember the song. I think it's I think it's from the song Hurricane, so I think it's from the album "To Be Everywhere Is Nowhere." But other than that, no. I mean, the coolest merch things I own, really, by them. I mean, I can't believe I didn't just say these in the first place, which are the DVDs. Like as a kid, I remember. I mean, they might even be quite hard to get now. Maybe you can't find them as easy. But I remember asking my mum for the Live at the House of Blues DVD, which was like their live DVD for the Alchemy Index, which is amazing. I mean, I've watched that hundreds of times. And then there was the tour kind of. It's kind of a tour documentary, kind of just like kind of the making of Thrice, which I think goes up to just before they recorded Viesu. Kind of, I think that was made around the time that they were starting to get quite commercially popular and starting to make it in like the UK and Europe and stuff, as well as America. And I, like I said, I used to watch that on sick days when I was off from school, or if I was ever feeling down or anything, I'd just watch that DVD. Like that was like watching, like it's like a comfort film for me. And I mean, it also a lot of the ideas I got about what being in a band would be like would be from that. Which obviously, being in a band in 2024 is nothing like being in a band in 2003. So, bless you, by the way. So like a lot of that's a weird one because like I watched that and like that kind of when I remember being about 15 and being thinking like, oh, one day I'll be in a band that does touring like this and does all this, and, you know. And obviously, don't get me wrong, I'm not, you know, kind of deluded into thinking that we're anywhere near the size Thrice were in 2002, 2003. But there was just a realization just how much music has changed, you know what I mean? And how it's not like it was then. Yeah. Not necessarily for the worst or for the better, it's just a different world. And that was kind of what I prepared myself for, I guess, from that video.
Yeah, exactly. I still can't believe you just told me you've got about 10 band shirts, and
probably more than that.
I tried to get rid of a load of band shirts the other week, and I have alone 18 Guns N' Roses band shirts.
Well,
after I tried to get rid of some.
Which one of us has the problem? Because 18 Guns N' Roses t-shirts. Yeah. I mean, I've probably got more. I mean, it's also because it's different as in like I have band t-shirts that I would never wear out anymore.
Right.
Not because there's anything wrong with the band, but it's just like maybe, you know, I don't. Yeah, it's just like it's an old t-shirt, so like I wear it to bed now. Like it's like I wouldn't like I've got like loads of backups. I remember when we were recording the record. This is quite funny actually. When we were recording the record, I remember just blasé kind of saying it to a couple of the lads in the band. I was just kind of like, by the way, if anyone has any band t-shirts of bands you know like, you know, and because I don't mind an oversized shirt if you're a bigger size than me or anything, you know, just bring one in. And the next day we were in the studio. Liam brought about, I'm not kidding you, he probably brought about 25 band t-shirts. He to go through, he's like, I've never worn that doesn't fit. That's got a horrible design, maybe you'll like it. Don't like that band, I just wanted to support them. Kind of just like listen, I went through them. And I got a couple out of that, but I think he took about 18 of them home.
Oh my days. It's a difficult thing. Like I remember when I started working in the music industry, and I'm very lucky and fortunate now that all of the gigs I get to go to for free because I work with bands. And when I first started, I said to myself that because I get to go for free now, that I would buy a piece of merch from every band that I went to go and see. But then I very quickly found I was forcing myself to buy things I might not necessarily even like. So thankfully,
Yeah.
I stopped that very quickly. But there's been a couple of band shirts I got early on where I was like, why did I do that? And I just never wore it.
Well, yeah, I'm just ultimately quite a what's the word? Frugal,
Mm.
tight. I don't know, one of them. So I don't spend money on band t-shirts if I can avoid. I mean, I will support bands as much as I can, of course, but I just have to really like a band to want to have their t-shirt.
Yeah.
Which is probably not a good thing. Maybe the sweet spot's somewhere in the middle between me and you. Maybe I need to support more bands. Maybe you need to not buy every single
Maybe I
t-shirt.
less bands.
Yeah, yeah. But we've always been lucky as well because people have always we used to. I mean, we used to be jokes about us that we had more merch designs than songs because we've always done really well. People have really supported our band through merch, and that was really lovely that people have done that back when we had the EP out because we had 4 songs, but we just kept doing new t-shirt designs and people liked them, so people kept buying them. And if people didn't do that, we probably wouldn't have recorded. I mean, we probably would have recorded the record, but not as easily or not as quick as we did. I know, quick, but yeah, it took us 4 years. Uh, uh, well, you know what I mean. Anyway, people are very nice and people are lovely and people support bands and people should do that more. And I should probably do that more as well.
Yeah, I find that as well. Like it took me, I was so against getting Spotify until lockdown 2020. And I still much prefer listening to like CDs and a full album. And I'm not a playlists girl at all, just because I find that obviously as a musician, you put so much love and effort and enthusiasm into
Mm-hmm.
creating this product from start to finish. And like I personally want to enjoy that music from start to finish the way you intended to
Mm-hmm.
record it. So I feel the same way about like buying band merch and stuff as well. Because I mean I have streaming services now, but I am very much
Mm-hmm.
aware that like it's not, I don't feel a part of a band that way. And I like
Mm-hmm.
to be able to like support and kind of like even be like a tiny piece of like this whole like pyramid that holds a band up kind of thing.
Of course, yeah, yeah. Because I mean, that's where most of the support for bands comes nowadays is merch. Because there's unlike, like I say, when I was watching that Thrice documentary, and I remember being like, like they were going like they did the whole classic kind of like almost like 80s 90s image I've got in my head of like they were flown to New York to sign a record deal. Like, I mean, that probably doesn't wouldn't happen for bands our size anyway, but even for bigger bands, I don't think that happens anymore. I just don't think the world is like that anymore. The power isn't necessarily in the artist's hands anymore, like maybe it perhaps was 20 years ago when Thrice were doing that, because you kind of relied on a band to make good music to then sell the records to make the record label money. I just think that it's a bit more complicated now. I think there's a lot more to it than just being a good band. And yeah,
Got to be the whole product now.
yeah, I guess there's an element of that. Yeah, and I guess just yeah, and I guess just it's just harder to make just good music to just kind of get a buy off that. I think you have to tour a lot. I mean, I guess you always have to tour a lot, but I don't know. I just feel like it's a bit more complicated now. Yeah, to just be just good. Um, but yeah.
Yeah. On that note, thank you so much for chatting with me this evening. I hope you've had a good time waxing lyrical about Thrice.
No, it has. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you for letting me talk about Thrice. No one else lets me talk about Thrice. So.
You hoped it would be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah, and I'm glad I thought about it a lot before because I did think a lot about kind of, you know, especially the early days, like how that happened, and like yeah, and I'm glad I can get it off my chest that it started with Busted as well because I could have lied and said, oh, it started with I don't know, Cannibal Corpse or something a bit more cool and metal, but or it didn't.
It's like a virtual confessional now.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to I'm Your Biggest Fan. If you enjoyed what you heard, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, send it to your nan in the post. Every little helps. You can follow us everywhere at biggestfan_pod.
Follow me everywhere at Wrathchild_Jazz, Noise at Noise UK on everything, Noise Podcast Network at Noise Podcast Network on everything, and Satanic Tico at Satanic Tico and at Pitch Black Nor. If you have a band member in mind that you think would be perfect for this podcast, perfect for this topic of conversation, or maybe you are the band member and you're the super fan, drop us a comment, drop us an email. All other info can be found below in the description. And thanks again for listening. We'll catch you soon.